All right, guys, so let's continue on chapter 6. What's wrong with our schools? Chapter 6, a free to choose what's wrong with our schools. This one is called The Obstacles to a Voucher Plan. The Obstacles to a Voucher Plan. Since we first proposed the voucher plan a quarter century ago as a practical solution to the defects of the public school system, support has grown. A number of national organizations favor it today. Since 1968, the Federal Office of Economic Opportunity and the Federal Institute of Education encourage and finance studies of voucher plans and offered to help finance experimental voucher plans. The Federal Institute of Education and the Federal Office of Economic Opportunity. In 1978, a constitutional amendment was on the ballot in Michigan to mandate a voucher plan. In 1978, a movement was underway in California to qualify a constitutional amendment mandating a voucher plan for the 1980 ballot. A nonprofit institute has recently been established to explore educational vouchers. At the federal level, bills providing for a limited credit against taxes for tuition paid. At the federal level, bills providing for a limited credit against taxes for tuition paid to non-public schools have several times come close to passing. While they are not a voucher plan proper, they are a partial variant, partial both because of the limit to the size of the credit and because of the difficulty of including persons with no or low tax liability. The perceived self-interest of the educational bureaucracy is a key obstacle to the introduction of market competition in schooling. The perceived self-interest of the educational bureaucracy They perceive self-interest of the educational bureaucracy as the key obstacle to the introduction of market competition in schooling. This interest group, which as Professor Edwin G. West demonstrated, played a key role in the establishment of public schooling in both the United States and Great Britain, has adamantly opposed every attempt to study, explore, or experiment with voucher plans. Because they're not going to be in control of the money anymore, control of the... It's interesting. Kenneth B. Clark, a black educator and psychologist, summed up the attitude of the school bureaucracy. It does seem likely that the changes necessary for increased efficiency of our urban public schools will come about because they should. What is most important in understanding the ability of the educational establishment to resist change is the fact that public school systems are protected public monopolies with only minimal competition from private and parochial schools. The fact that public school systems are a protected public monopolies with only minimal competition for private and parochial schools. Kenneth B. Clark, black educator and psychologist. Few critics of the American urban public schools, even severe ones such as myself, dare to question the givens of the present organization of public education, nor dare the critics question the relevance of the criteria and standards for selecting superintendents, principals, and teachers, or the relevance of all of these to the objectives of public education. Producing a literate and informed public to carry on the business of democracy and to the goal of producing human beings with social sensitivity and dignity and creativity and a respect for the humanity of others. A monopoly need not genuinely concern itself with these matters, as long as local school systems can be assured of state aid and increasing federal aid without the accountability which inevitably comes with aggressive competition. It would be sentimental, wishful thinking to expect any significant increase in the efficiency of our public schools. If there are no alternatives to the present system, if there are no alternatives to the present system short of present private and parochial schools, which are approaching their limit of expansion, then the possibilities of improvement in public education are limited. Nor dare the critics question the relevance of the criteria and standards for selecting superintendents, principals, and teachers, or the relevance of the criteria and standards for selecting superintendents, principals, and teachers, or the relevance of all these to the objectives of public education, producing a literate and informed public to carry on the business of democracy. That's supposed to be our education, right? Producing a literate and informed public to carry on the business of democracy, and to the goal of producing human beings with social sensitivity and dignity and creativity and a respect for the humanity of others. The validity of this assessment was subsequently demonstrated by the reaction of the educational establishment to the federal government's offer to finance experiments and vouchers. Promising initiatives were developed in a considerable number of communities. Only one at Alum Rock, California succeeded. It was severely hobbled. The case we know best from personal experience was in New Hampshire, where William P. Bittenbender, the chairman of the State Board of Education, was dedicated to conducting an experiment. The conditions seemed excellent. Funds were granted by the federal government. Detailed plans were drawn up. Experimental communities were selected. Preliminary agreement from parents and administrators was obtained. When all seemed ready to go, one community after another was persuaded by the local superintendent of schools or other leading figures in the educational establishment to withdraw from the proposed experiment, and the whole venture collapsed. So they were persuaded by the local superintendent or by other leading figures in the educational establishment to withdraw. The alum rock experiment was the only one actually to be carried out, and it was hardly a proper test of vouchers. It was limited to a few public schools and allowed no addition to government funds from either parents or others. A number of so-called mini schools were set up, each with a different curriculum. For 3 years, parents could choose which their children would attend. Parents could choose which their child would attend, or their children. As Don Ayers, who was in charge of the experiment, said, probably the most significant thing that happened was that the teachers for the first time had some power, and they were able to build a curriculum to fit the needs of the children as they saw it. The state and local school board did not dictate the kind of curriculum that was used in McCollum School. The parents became more involved in the school. They attended more meetings. Also, they had power to pull their child out of that particular mini school if they chose another mini school. Despite the limited scope of that experiment, giving parents greater choice had a major effect on education quality. In terms of test scores, McCollum School went from 13th to 2nd place among the schools in its district. But the experiment is now over, ended by the educational establishment, the same fate that befell Harlem Prep. The same resistance is present in Great Britain, where an extremely effective group called FEVER, Friends of the Education Voucher Experiment in Representative Regions, have tried for 4 years to introduce an experiment in a town in the county of Kent, England. The governing authorities have been favorable, but the educational establishment has been adamantly opposed. The attitude of the professional educators toward vouchers is well expressed by Dennis G., headmaster of a school in Ashford, Kent, and secretary of the local teachers union. We see this as a barrier between us and the parent. Duh, this sticky little piece of paper, i.e. the voucher, in their hand, coming in and under duress, you will do this or else. We make our judgment because we believe it's in the best interest of every Willie and every little Johnny that we've got, and not because someone's going to say, if you don't do it, we will do that. It's the sort of philosophy of the marketplace that we object to. Idiot. In other words, Mr. G objects to giving the customer, in this case the parent, anything to say about the kind of schooling his child gets. Instead, he wants the bureaucrats to decide. Yeah, exactly. We are answerable, says Mr. G, to parents through our governing bodies, through the inspectorate, to the county council, and through Her Majesty's inspectorate to the Secretary of State. These are people, professionals, who are able to make professional judgments. I'm not sure that parents know what is best educationally for their children. This is what he's saying, this guy, Mr. G. I'm not sure that parents know what is best educationally for their children. They know what's best for them to eat. They know the best environment they can provide at home. But we've been trained to ascertain the problems of children, to detect their weaknesses, to put right those things that need putting right. And we want to do this freely with the cooperation of parents and not under undue strains. End quote. Needless to say, at least some parents view things very different. A local electrical worker and his wife in Kent had to engage in a year-long dispute with the bureaucracy to get their son into the school that they thought was best suited to his needs. Said Maurice Walton, I guess the parent, in quotes, as the present system stands, I think we parents have no freedom of choice whatever. They are told what is good for them by the teachers. They are told that the teachers are doing a great job, and they've just got to say, and they just got no say at all. If the voucher system were introduced, I think it would bring teachers and parents together, I think closer. The parent that is worried about his child would remove his child from the school that wasn't giving a good service and take it to one that was. The parent that is worried about his child would remove his child from the school that wasn't giving a good service and take it to one that was. If a school was going to crumble because it's got nothing but vandalism, it's generally slack on discipline and the children aren't learning. Well, that's a good thing from my point of view. I can understand the teacher saying it's a gun at my head, but they've got the same gun at the parent's head at the moment. The parent goes up to the teacher and says, well, I'm not satisfied with what you're doing. And the teacher can say, well, tough. You can't take him away. You can't move him. You can't do what you like. So go away and stop bothering me. That can be the attitude of some teachers today, and often it is, but now that the positions are being reversed with vouchers and the roles are changed, I can only say tough on the teachers. Let them pull their socks up and give us a better deal, and let us participate. Let us participate more. Despite the unrelenting end quote. So, despite the unrelenting opposition of the educational establishment, we believe that vouchers or their equivalent will be introduced in some form or the other soon. We are more optimistic in this area than in welfare because education touches so many of us so deeply. We are willing to make far greater efforts to improve the schooling of our children than to eliminate waste and inequity in the distribution of relief. We are willing to make far greater efforts to improve the schooling of our children than to eliminate waste and inequity in the distribution of relief. So first, we are willing to make greater efforts to improve the schooling of our children, and after that, to eliminate waste and inequity in the distribution of relief. Discontent with schooling has been rising. So far as we can see, greater parental choice is the only alternative that is available to reduce that discontent. At this point, parents don't even give a fuck. They're just, they like, again, they just feel they have no control. So why stress over it? Vouchers keep being rejected and keep emerging with more and more support.